Something unbelievable is happening in the Volusia County. The shoreline is changing fast. Erosion at Wilbur by the sea has been severe, and one home has fallen into the water. Now something even stranger has happened offshore. The ocean floor near Florida collapsed without warning. A plain of sand and silt sank away, and the sea began to show what it had hidden for a long time. Let's take a look at what exactly happened. At first, the signs were small. Currents pulled harder than usual and pushed buoys off their lines. Experienced fishers felt confused by water they thought they knew. Hours later, sonar screens lit up with a new shape. A wide depression appeared and kept deepening. The bottom looked like it was folding into itself. When the motion stopped, a flat seabed had turned into a chasm, and along the rim, new ground rose where none had been. As the water cleared, rocky edges came into view. They were coated in coral, yet their lines looked too straight to dismiss. Faces met at crisp angles. Some carried patterns that looked deliberate. Marine geologists pointed at shapes that recalled walls and columns, as if parts of a place that once stood in the air had been buried by time and tide. The idea set off a rush of questions, and the first teams raced to the site. Were these forms the work of pressure alone, or were they the remains of something built and drowned when the seas rose? While experts debated, biologists sped to the scene. Caverns opened by the collapse flickered with faint light. Algae painted stone in green and blue, and the glow-lit fish with translucent scales. Long-limbed crustaceans scuttled across fresh surfaces. It felt as if a sealed vault had cracked open. Divers who eased along the new cliffs felt the place in their bones. The only sounds were their bubbles and the slow creak of rock. Beneath overhangs, they found narrow openings that led into tight rooms and then dropped into a maze. A few divers said they saw markings like carvings, weathered but still clear enough to notice. Whether fear colored those reports or not, the accounts added to the sense that the collapse had revealed more than broken stone. Water behavior changed too. Currents spiraled through the chasm and old migration routes bent. Reefs nearby showed stress from drifting clouds of silt. At the same time, schools of tarpon and snapper gathered at the new drop-off, and sharks circled in greater numbers. Some teams suggested there might be mineral-rich vents or magnetic anomalies below, and that marine life could sense those signals. No single idea answered every question. Onshore, the mood split between caution and opportunity. Fishers saw promise in the sudden abundance. Boat owners saw risk in unstable contours and strong pulls. City leaders faced hard choices. Should the area open to limited tours or remain closed while scientists learned what they could? The tension rose when word spread that bones were visible in the fresh rock. Some vertebrae were larger than those of living whales. Paleontologists proposed marine reptiles from the age of dinosaurs and moved fast. With the science came story and memory. Florida folklore has long told of lands that slipped under the sea and of people who watched the water rise. Tales of sunken cities returned to conversation. The geometric shapes gave those tales fresh weight. Whether the truth proves to be memory or settlement from a lower sea level, the event gave those stories something real to point to. Tourism woke up, divers asked for permits, filmmakers called for access, treasure hunters talked about relics, local officials asked for a plan. Protect the site as a fragile resource or allow strict exploration that could bring jobs and revenue. The debate set value against value in public view. Scale made people look outward. If this could happen here, could it happen in the Gulf, the Caribbean, or on other coasts? The collapse reminded everyone that the ocean floor is not a flat picture. It is a landscape with ridges, faults, and voids that can open with little notice. Scientists pressed for better maps and more sensors, saying that understanding the bottom is a safeguard for ecosystems, ports, and people. The site refused a neat label. It looked like a mix of sinkhole, canyon, and old reef. The drop stretched for miles, and the walls fell into shadow. Sunlight reached only the upper ledges, leaving the lower levels to sonar and remote cameras. Those cameras returned glimpses of arches and pillars coated with growth. Even through the blur, the sense of order remained. Nature makes patterns, yet these patterns felt like something more. Environmental worries followed close behind. Sediment clouds smothered nearby coral and seagrass. Manatees lost patches of feeding ground. At the same time, the fresh rock offered clean places for new coral to settle. The mineral mix around the vents seemed to feed bursts of life. The scene held two truths at once: loss and renewal. From the air, pilots saw the water bend around the hole. The sea swirled as if trying to fill the space and failing. The color change from bright aquamarine to sudden black was stark even at altitude. It was a fast lesson in how landscapes can change in hours. What had been a quiet plain became a stage where new details kept arriving. Teams from many fields gathered at the rim. Geologists traced faults and measured fresh fractures. Biologists listed species and watched for behavior that did not match the books. Archaeologists scanned the stone for tool marks and for lines that might be writing. Each group found clues, and each clue raised new questions. The public followed every update. Photos and clips raced around the world and sparked drawings and plans. Documentaries began pre-production within days. Children drew glowing fish and gates of stone. The event gave families a way to talk about wonder and about how little of the sea is known. Curiosity became a shared response. As scans improved, details added up. Some walls held repeating shapes like tiles pressed in place. Columns rose from flat bases like platforms. Divers brought up fragments that looked like hardened pottery. Marine archaeologists suggested that lower sea levels in the past might explain a settlement now underwater. If so, then the coast once held people who built and lived where waves now break. The vents added another surprise. Warm mineral-rich water shimmered in the light. Mats of bacteria glowed under ultraviolet lamps. Tube worms waved scarlet plumes in the current. Such scenes usually appear in deep trenches far from sunlight. To watch them in Florida's shallows was surprising. Inside the caverns, sound traveled in strange ways. Low hums rolled through the stone and seemed to move the water. Tests suggested the chasm acted like a giant echo chamber. The effect could confuse whales and dolphins that use sound to see. Dolphins were already circling the site in loops that looked unusual. At the surface, more oddities appeared. Boat compasses drifted above the collapse. Geophysicists suspected iron-rich layers or shifts deep below that bent local magnetic lines. Some raised the idea of buried volcanic material or the scar of an ancient impact now revealed by stress. These theories sketched a set of possibilities. Currents carved spirals at the rim. Particles spun in steady eddies and caught sunlight like glitter. The view was beautiful and risky at once. The pull could trap divers who drifted too close. Robots had to be tethered with heavy cables, and a few snapped under strain. Every trip down required a careful plan. Cliff faces flashed with veins of quartz and flecks of metal. Some samples suggested rare elements might be held in the rock. That idea stirred talk of mining, but pushback was swift. Any attempt to extract would likely shatter an ecosystem that was just finding balance. Still, the hint of value made the conversation louder. More startling were caverns with pockets of ancient air. Submersibles recorded large bubbles rising from cracks and shaking the surface like boiling pots. If captured in time, those pockets might reveal the makeup of the atmosphere from long ago. For climate research, that would be a rare window. Stalactites and stalagmites filled some passages. They shone under lights and rang softly when tapped. Their presence meant the area had been dry before the sea claimed it. The thought that early people might have walked there made the place feel charged. The ground shook lightly during the collapse. Sensors on shore picked up small tremors that rolled along the bottom. People miles inland felt faint shudders underfoot. The quakes were not strong, but they hinted at deeper movement. If one section failed, others might be waiting. Stories from the first weeks sounded unreal, but kept repeating. Sunlight speared through narrow cuts and turned mineral stains into bands of purple, gold, and red. One diver described a stone arch that framed the dark like a window. Sight and feeling mixed until the rocks looked like art. Nature adapted fast. Barracuda patrolled the ledges and struck in bursts. Sea turtles grazed on new algae. Sonar caught the shadow of a giant squid near the bottom. Each change showed how quickly life reshapes around a sudden break. At night, the chasm glowed. Bioluminescent life spread across fresh stone and painted the water with shifting light. From a boat, the scene looked like a mirror of the night sky. In simple terms, a quiet stretch of seabed became a frontier. What rose was more than rock and bones. It was proof that the planet still keeps secrets. The collapse read like a message written in water and stone. It reminded us that the Earth moves under us whether we notice or not. It opened questions about history, nature, and choice, and invited everyone to look closer at what waits just out of view. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us what your thoughts are on Florida's ocean floor collapse, disaster, or hidden discovery. We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.